Welcome to A Powerless Mage Presents The Deep Dive.
We're really glad you're with us today. We're going to be looking at a whole stack of sources, articles, some psychological papers, even some philosophical texts that all point to one very central and pervasive problem.
And that's the feeling of persistent dissatisfaction.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're joining us, it's pretty likely you recognize that feeling. It's that sort of constant hum in the background, that feeling like you're not quite there yet. It's that sense that no matter how much you achieve or what you buy, something is just missing. We live in a time of, relative prosperity for many, but this feeling of insufficiency, what we often just call misery,
Yeah.
it seems to be the default setting.
It really does. So our mission today as well, it's surgical. We're going to dissect that feeling of misery. We'll peel back the layers and show you where it actually comes from.
And more importantly, we're going to arm you with a specific, practical tool. This isn't just about thinking positive.
No, not at all. It's a real mechanism to reset your internal baseline and actually start generating genuine well-being.
The sources we've pulled together for this are, frankly, very persuasive. They go beyond these abstract ideas of happiness, and they focus on the mechanics, the nuts and bolts of appreciation.
We're looking for solutions that can genuinely transform your mindset. The goal is to help you value the present moment instead of always focusing on what you lack.
At its core, the problem really is defined by our imagination.
It is. Misery is one of the most destructive ideas we can harbor in our minds. So our task is to understand how we create it, how we conjure it up.
And then how we replace it.
Right. How we replace it with its equally powerful counterpart, authentic gratitude.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with one of the most destructive ideas in our imagination, misery.
So when we use the word misery, we usually just mean, being sad or unhappy.
Right, it's kind of a catch-all term.
It is. But the sources we've looked at are really clear that this word actually holds two very distinct concepts.
Yeah.
And understanding the difference between them is, well, it's the key to overcoming the feeling.
Okay, so what are they?
The concepts are scarcity and insufficiency.
Scarcity and insufficiency. Okay, that distinction feels important because it helps us separate, real-world, objective problems from the stuff that's more subjective, more in our heads.
That's it, exactly. Most of us listening today, you are probably facing the latter, the subjective hurdle, but your mind is treating it like the former.
Like a real life or death scarcity problem.
Precisely. Let's use a simple example to make it clear. The sources use this flour analogy, and it works perfectly because it's so mathematical.
Okay.
So imagine you're a baker. You need exactly 1 kilogram of flour for a really important recipe. 1 kilogram. That's your need.
Got it.
Okay, scenario 1. You go to your cupboard, you look, and you find 900 grams of flour.
So not quite enough.
Right. That quantity is insufficient. You can't make the recipe right now. It's an operational problem. But is that misery?
I mean, no. It's annoying. It's an inconvenience, but it's not misery. You've still got most of what you need.
Exactly. You have 90% of it. Now, scenario 2. You go to your cupboard, and you find only 10 grams of flour.
Oh.
You need 1,000 grams, and you have 10. That tiny fraction, that represents a crushing, an extreme lack compared to what you need that starts to fit the definition of objective scarcity.
And if that flour was, say, the only food you had for your family,
Mm-hmm.
that would absolutely be objective misery.
That's the difference. One is a proportional gap. The 10 grams is a genuine state of objective lack. The 900 grams is just insufficient for one specific task.
Okay, so here's the pivot, right? Because this is where it gets real for most of us.
This is the critical pivot for our deep dive. The overwhelming majority of people who describe themselves as miserable today, they are not suffering from the 10-gram problem.
They're living the 900-gram life. Or maybe even the 10-kilogram life.
And still feeling like it's not enough. Their challenge isn't objective scarcity, it's a distorted perception.
It's fascinating. The sources actually define the miserable as people whose perception is just permanently calibrated to find the deficit.
Yes. It's like a mental confirmation bias. Your internal story is, I don't have enough. And so your brain filters all of reality to find evidence that proves that story is true.
And it ignores all the evidence to the contrary.
All of it. So if you earn a good salary, you don't focus on the 90% that provides you with comfort and security.
Yeah.
You fixate on the extra 10% you'd need to afford that slightly bigger house.
Or your car. Your car is reliable, it gets you to work every day, but all you can think about is that little rattle it makes that a brand new model wouldn't.
And you completely overlook the fact that you have reliable transportation, something billions of people don't.
Hold on, I want to push back on this a little. Because saying misery is just a choice.
Yeah.
For someone who feels really trapped in a terrible job or a difficult family situation, it can feel a bit dismissive to just say, oh, just choose to appreciate your 900 grams.
That's a really fair and necessary challenge. And the sources are careful here. They don't equate misery with sadness. Sadness is a natural, necessary human emotion.
Okay.
They frame misery as a cognitive habit, a consistent effort of the mind to focus on what's absent. So it's less like a switch you just flip.
And more like a muscle.
It's a muscle you've unintentionally been strengthening for years. The muscle of comparison, the muscle of deficit finding.
Yeah.
It takes real effort and, the right tools to retrain it.
That reframes it for me. It's not a moral failing. It's an ingrained habit of focus. And the ultimate example of this habit has to be the classic miser, right? The person who hoards wealth.
Yes, the tacaño, as some of the sources call them. This is a figure you see in literature all the time. Someone who has vast, objective resources, fortunes, properties, gold, but their daily life is just filled with fear and unhappiness.
By any objective measure, they are incredibly wealthy. But they live like they're destitute, denying themselves basic comforts, worrying constantly.
This example is the absolute proof that just having resources doesn't solve the problem of misery. If $1 billion can't guarantee you a sense of peace, then the problem is, without a doubt, internal.
The miser looks at a huge pile of gold and doesn't see the wealth they have.
No, they see the tiny percentage their competitor might have just gained, or the small fraction they might have to spend tomorrow. Their perception of security is just endlessly deferred.
So they're not just hoarding money, they're hoarding joy, experience, peace of mind.
Yeah.
All for a sense of security that never, ever arrives.
Correct. So the main idea to take from this section is that for most of us, persistent misery comes from a fundamental misalignment, a gap between our objective reality and our subjective perception. It's a cognitive habit we reinforce every single time we focus on the deficit instead of the asset.
So it's less about what's in your wallet and more about what's in your mind, the lens you're using to look at your life. So think about your own life right now. Where do you feel genuine, objective scarcity, the 10 grams of flour? And where is that feeling actually a deeply ingrained habit, distorted perception of things you already have, like the miser counting his gold?
Yeah.
So that cognitive habit, the one that's always finding the deficit, it doesn't just exist on its own. It actually drives this vicious, self-sustaining system. Our sources call it the insatiable loop.
Or the circle of dissatisfaction. It's the deep link between that underlying feeling of misery and the just relentless desire to always aspire for more.
We need to give the mechanism behind this a name, don't we?
We do. And the concept that fuels this entire loop is called hedonic adaptation.
Ah, the happiness treadmill. I've heard that term before, but let's clarify it because it sounds a little bit like a fancy way of saying we just get bored easily.
It's a bit more precise than just boredom. Hedonic adaptation is essentially a psychological thermostat. When something good happens, you get a raise, a new car, your happiness level spikes up.
Right. You feel great.
For a while. But very quickly, sometimes within just weeks or months, your internal baseline for what feels normal just resets to that new, higher level.
So the new, better thing becomes the new normal.
Exactly. The sources point out that this was a really important survival mechanism for our ancestors. I mean, if they had been permanently satisfied after one good meal, they never would have bothered to go hunting again.
So it's a biological drive that's meant to keep us striving. But in modern life, when our basic survival needs are met, that same mechanism just latches on to the next shiny object.
Or the next incremental salary increase. Precisely. And we see this so clearly in what the sources call the upgrade pattern. It pretty much defines modern consumer life.
Okay, let's use an example. A phone.
A phone is perfect. Initially, you want a new phone just for its function. To make calls, send texts, you get it, and you feel that spike of happiness. But because of hedonic adaptation, that spike fades. So what happens next?
You immediately start looking for the next level of satisfaction.
Yes. You start thinking, I want one with a better camera. You notice your current one is a little fuzzy and low light, and suddenly this phone, which works perfectly for its main job, feels inadequate.
And then that camera isn't good enough, so you need the latest model. And then the Pro version, the absolute flagship model with 8K video that, let's be honest, you're never going to use.
But the desire for it, the perceived need for the absolute best, is what drives the chronic dissatisfaction. You're spending huge amounts of mental energy just to marginally improve a life that is already, by global standards, completely elite.
And this pattern, it's not just about phones and gadgets, is it? This is where it gets really dark, because it starts to poison every other part of your life.
It absolutely does. In your career, it's just a constant moving of the goalposts. You work so hard for a promotion, you get the title you wanted, and for maybe 2 days, you feel successful.
And by day 3.
By day 3, you're already looking at the next rung on the ladder, the regional manager role, and you start finding reasons why the job you just got isn't quite the right one after all. The achievement is devalued almost instantly.
And in relationships, I mean, this has to be incredibly destructive.
It is. You find a partner, a real person, who is wonderful and flawed. But because you're always seeking that upgrade, you start comparing this real present person to some idealized version you've seen in a movie or on social media.
And that comparison just devalues the person who's actually there with you.
Completely. You start focusing on the tiny gaps. They don't share this one hobby, or they forgot that one anniversary, and the huge amount of love and support they provide just becomes invisible. The relationship you have is diminished by the imaginary perfect one you think you should have.
This constant upgrade-driven dissatisfaction, it leads to the cruelest part of the whole loop, which is this intense self-judgment. If the definition of enough is always something you don't have, you're basically training yourself to judge your own self-worth based entirely on what you lack. You feel guilty for not being further ahead.
The emotional weight of that self-judgment is devastating. One of the sources uses this really powerful image to frame it. It says, I can define myself using 1 or 2 words, but there are millions of terms that describe what I am not.
Wow. That's profound. And it's terrifying when you really stop to think about it.
Yeah.
If I define myself by positive things, a good parent, a hard worker, that's a small affirming list.
But the universe of what you are not.
It's infinite. I'm not a world-class athlete. I'm not a concert pianist. I'm not retired at 40. I'm not perfectly patient.
Exactly. So from that self-critical viewpoint, which is driven by this endless comparison, it becomes, and I'm quoting here, inevitable to feel insufficient and consequently miserable. You've built a mental game that you are guaranteed to lose.
But wait a second. Isn't ambition a good thing? I mean, if we stop trying to get more, won't we just stagnate? Aren't the people who push for the next upgrade the ones who drive all of human progress?
That's an excellent point, and the sources make a really crucial distinction here. They separate healthy ambition from what they call destructive aspiration.
Okay, what's the difference?
Healthy ambition is process-oriented. It's about enjoying the effort, the learning, the work itself. Destructive aspiration is purely outcome-obsessed. It's driven only by the fear of lack or the need for external validation. You're just chasing the next goalpost to quiet that feeling of inadequacy for a little while.
So the point isn't to stop striving. It's to look at the motivation behind your striving. If your motivation is fear of what you lack, you're just making the wound of misery deeper.
You're actively darkening your own perception of everything you possess, just by focusing only on what's missing. You willingly choose to live in the world of the miser, the person who has so much, but only sees the millions of things they don't have. So thinking about your own life, what is one aspiration, a purchase, a promotion, a goal that you recently achieved, only to find yourself immediately looking for the next upgrade? What would happen if you simply paused today and decided that particular achievement or possession was truly enough just for this moment?
So we've established that misery is this habit of perception, and it's fueled by this constant upgrade cycle of hedonic adaptation. To break that cycle, we need to do something to violently shake that perception.
Yes. We have to stop centering our entire lives on what's missing and start actively valuing what we already have.
And to do that, we need an objective reset, something undeniable that shows us what enough really means. The whole problem with the insatiable loop is that we're always comparing ourselves sideways, right, to our neighbors, our colleagues.
Or the curated lives of people on social media. We need a vertical, global perspective check.
And I want to be clear, this section isn't about making you feel guilty for wanting a better life. It's about challenging that deep internal story of not enough by confronting the objective truth of where you stand in the world.
Exactly. The sources bring in this really startling thought experiment. It's based on global metrics from places like the World Bank and the UN. They establish a very modest, very practical definition of what it means to have objective sufficiency and security.
The baseline for getting out of absolute poverty and having basic dignity.
Hey, that's it. And the criteria for being in what they call the global elite, the absolute top tier of wealth and stability, are incredibly basic.
Okay, let's hear them.
They're focused on essential security. So, 1, having a roof to sleep under tonight, a place that is reliably secure from the elements.
Okay, shelter.
2, possessing a refrigerator with food inside, which means you have consistent access to nutrition. 3, having some cash in your wallet or immediate access to money.
Little bit of liquid cash.
4, maintaining money in a bank account, no matter how small the amount. A buffer, a safety net. And 5, and this one is interesting, even having some loose change lying around your home, which indicates some level of surplus.
That sounds incredibly basic. Shelter, food, a little savings. That's the global elite. It seems impossible that criteria that low would exclude billions of people.
It is the brutal, objective reality. And here's a statistic that requires you, the listener, to fundamentally reconsider your personal narrative of lack.
Okay.
If you meet those 5 criteria consistently, you belong to the 11% richest people on the planet.
The 11%. Let's just pause on that number for a second. That means almost 9 out of 10 people on Earth do not consistently have that basic safety net that you possess. Shelter, food, and a financial buffer.
This isn't about private jets. It's about basic, assured security. And it's important to get granular about what it means to be in the other 89%.
Right. It means not having a roof is a constant threat. It means that the refrigerator with food is replaced by the constant, exhausting labor of just trying to find enough to eat for today.
And that's the difference between absolute poverty and relative poverty, which is a key distinction the sources make. Most of us in that 11% are struggling with relative poverty.
Which is, my card isn't as nice as my neighbor's, or I can't afford the vacation I want this year. It's real financial pressure, but it all happens inside this bubble of absolute security.
Exactly. The 89% are struggling with absolute poverty. Their lack isn't a matter of social comparison, it's a matter of biological survival. Think about running water. We turn on a tap without a second thought.
Of course.
For billions of people, getting clean water is a multi-hour physical chore every single day. Time that could be spent on education or earning an income, that is life outside the 11%.
So if you're stuck in that insatiable loop, wanting a better phone, a bigger house, you're basically focusing all your mental energy on improving the quality of your life inside the top 11%.
Your struggle is one of perception and comparison, not systemic scarcity or objective threat. This statistic is like shock therapy. It's designed to snap that perception back into alignment with reality.
We just take these things for granted, don't we? Reliable electricity, being able to store food.
Yeah.
If we just zoom out, we realize these are not the default human experience. They are massive global privileges.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear a listener thinking, okay, but isn't this just a form of guilt tripping? I mean, my relative financial stress is still real, even if I am globally privileged. How do the sources handle that?
That's the key pushback, and the sources are very clear. This perspective check is not meant to induce guilt. It's meant to reset your baseline of appreciation.
So it transforms the story.
It transforms the narrative from I'm struggling because I lack basic things to I'm struggling with dissatisfaction because my expectations have been inflated by constant comparison. The struggle is real, but its source is internal, not external.
Once you recognize that you are operating from this position of massive global advantage, that you're starting the race already past the finish line of basic human needs, the misery that's based on lack should start to dissolve.
The true shortage isn't in your resources. It's in your internal appreciation for the resources that are already sustaining you.
Knowing that you possess more guaranteed security and wealth than billions of people on Earth, how does that knowledge truly change your focus for today? Should you prioritize gaining more within that top 11%, or protecting, cultivating, and deeply appreciating the fundamental assets you already own?
So we've pinpointed the problem. Misery is a habit of perception driven by hedonic adaptation. And we've given you the intellectual solution, that objective reality check of the 11% metric.
Right. But to truly conquer the habit, we need more than just an intellectual idea. We need a concrete, actionable tool that turns that acknowledgement into a real, heartfelt feeling, a genuine gratitude.
And this brings us to the methodology of gratitude.
Because, as we mentioned, the standard advice, just list 5 things you're grateful for, it often falls flat. It becomes an empty chore you rush through. You check the boxes. Family, job, health.
Yeah.
But you don't feel it. Why does that approach fail so often?
It fails because it lacks emotional stakes. It misses a key psychological principle called the contrast effect. We don't really value the light until we've felt the darkness. When you just list my health, you're ticking an intellectual box. You haven't mentally confronted the pain and the cost of actually losing it. So the gratitude just stays on the surface. It's superficial.
So to cultivate real, genuine gratitude, we have to deliberately create those emotional stakes. The core insight here is that authentic gratitude has to be preceded by the emotional experience of loss.
Even if that loss is only imagined, you have to confront the reality of not having something before you can truly, deeply appreciate having it.
So what's the technique called?
It's often called negative visualization or imagined loss. And it does take more effort than just writing a list, but its emotional impact is instant and profound. You choose one aspect of your life and you truly reflect on what it would be like to live without it.
And this reflection has to be detailed.
Yeah.
Visceral.
It has to trigger a genuine feeling of fear or sadness.
But this sounds, it sounds incredibly difficult, maybe even painful. Are the sources really suggesting we should deliberately inflict emotional trauma on ourselves just to feel more appreciative? That seems counterproductive.
That's a critical challenge. And no, it's not about inflicting trauma. It's about using a controlled, imaginative exercise to access a genuine emotional contrast.
Like a vaccine.
It's exactly like a vaccine. A small, controlled dose of fear to build immunity against chronic ingratitude. And the sources are clear. This should be a periodic, focused practice, not some daily self-torture session. It's a sharp tool you use to reset your perspective when that insatiable loop starts to take over.
Okay, let's walk the listener through some of the specific examples from the source material. We can start with something that seems really mundane. Let's start with your bed.
Reflect on life without your bed. And don't just think, oh, I'd sleep on the floor. Really immerse yourself in that reality. Imagine the cold, hard floor, the recurring back pain you'd have, the lack of deep, restorative sleep.
And how would that lack of rest affect everything else? Your focus at work, your patience with your family, your overall mental health.
Exactly. Your bed is instantly transformed. It's no longer just a piece of furniture. It becomes the foundation for your dignity, your productivity, your physical well-being. The simple presence of that warm, secure place is revealed as a massive luxury.
You could do the same with running water from your sink. Imagine having to carry every single drop of water you use for cooking, cleaning, drinking from a source miles away. That boring old tap is suddenly freedom from hours of physical labor every single day.
Now let's move to something a bit harder. Your job. The routine job that right now might feel boring or stressful. Reflect on life without it.
Imagine the immediate crushing financial panic, the shame of having to explain the situation to your family, the loss of structure, of routine, of a professional identity.
It's not just the income that disappears. It's a huge organizing principle for your entire life. That boring commute, that annoying email chain, they suddenly become tangible sources of stability and security that you would desperately miss.
And finally, the most necessary and the most difficult part of the exercise, your loved ones. Reflecting on life without your partner or your children or your closest friends.
This one requires real courage. Think about the physical silence in your home, the absence of future holidays, of inside jokes, of that immediate source of comfort.
The person you might occasionally argue with over something silly.
Yeah.
You realize they are an irreplaceable pillar of your entire existence. The imagined loss just forces their emotional value to rush forward and fill your mind.
This perspective of loss is the engine of genuine gratitude. It forces us to value the very things that hedonic adaptation causes us to ignore and dismiss.
When you stop taking your bed or your job or your partner for granted, when you really comprehend the true cost of their absence, you understand that they are immense, immeasurable blessings.
And this is what leads to the transformation. Only after this rigorous, heartfelt reflection on potential loss, only when you truly comprehend the depth of what you possess, can you turn around and genuinely say thank you from your heart.
And that feeling, it isn't a check mark on a list. It's a warmth. It's a sense of relief. It's a recognition of profound sufficiency. It's the moment your perception corrects itself and dissolves that feeling of misery.
So take a moment right now. Choose one seemingly mundane aspect of your life, your consistent access to clean water, your basic job, or your home, and truly, deeply imagine it gone. What precise feeling does that loss trigger, and how does that immediate, heartfelt change of perspective alter the weight and importance of that asset in your life today?
This has been a necessary, tough, and, a profound deep dive. To synthesize what we've learned today, misery is overwhelmingly a cognitive habit. It's a perception fueled by that insatiable loop of comparison, where hedonic adaptation is always moving the goalposts.
And we established that Objectively speaking, if you have a roof over your head, food security, and some basic savings, you belong to the 11% richest people on the planet.
Which means the vast majority of your life struggle is one of managing your expectations and your perception, not a struggle against actual scarcity.
And most critically, the sources taught us that the only real path to cultivating genuine, lasting gratitude, the true antidote to chronic misery, is to appreciate what you stand to lose.
We have to set aside that debilitating focus on lack and instead cultivate a meaningful, heartfelt appreciation for the present moment and all the extraordinary assets that it contains.
And here is a final provocative thought for you to chew on. The greatest power we have is the ability to shift our focus instantly. If misery is structurally defined by the active commitment to focus on what we lack, then true well-being is simply the active commitment right now, today, to acknowledge what is already enough.
Don't simply take our word, put everything you heard here to the test. Make this knowledge truly yours.
We invite you to share your ideas, your thoughts, and your experiences in the comments section below. Like this deep dive if you enjoyed it or if it was useful to you, and subscribe to learn more about similar topics.
Remember, the power is yours.